Hello everybody, welcome to the Whiskey Dictionary. I wanted to talk about a live stream that I did just a few days ago, where I challenged myself to take all of the whiskeys that I had given a rating of stock it, and then drink them again and see if I still agreed. Now there were a couple of whiskeys that I have decided I'm removing off of my stock it list. And in the course of doing so, I actually discovered another one that I wanted to add to the stock it list. But this got me thinking. I have a backlog of about 270, 290 reviews, something crazy like that. And I figured I probably don't agree with a lot of the ratings that I gave myself. And that's true, I didn't. So this episode is going to be the correction of past sins, of which there are many. Before I get into this though, if you're feeling inspired, put down in the comments what whiskeys you used to think were awesome that you no longer feel that way. Or something that you used to think was bad and you learned to love. Either one would be awesome, because I'd just kind of like to get a gauge. Alright, at the end of this, also just for fun, I'm going to take my least favorite whiskey, and I'm going to try it one more time, and we're going to see if I've changed my mind. I suspect I won't, but it would be worth hanging out for. So let's get into the list. The first three whiskeys are going to be whiskeys that I'm downgrading from my rating of stock it. Now the first one, this one was a surprise, and I'm going to try not to just say that to everyone because they're all going to be a surprise. This one was honestly a surprise because the Glenlivet 12 is a whiskey that I have recommended to a lot of people. But what I actually was recommending was back when it used to come in the green bottle. I believe it was slightly different. The recipe was probably not any different, but the fact that it is a single malt, it's coming from, you know, the same distillery, blah, 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 season. Things have changed. Things have changed at Glenlivet. The 12 is not what it used to be. So I do not rate this one stock it anymore. In fact, this is going to be one of my biggest movers. I'm putting this one all the way to ignore it. I do not think you need to have the Glenlivet 12. Some of the higher year ones are still pretty good, but the 12 is just skip it. There's better single malts out there. Next is the Glenmorangie 10. I had this one as a stock it. I'm moving it just down to a buy it. I think that this one's still pretty good, but it's not as good as I remembered, and just thinking about the other single malt scotches that are available for roughly the same price, I think that there are better ones out there, and maybe I'll do a video sometime of, you know, things you should drink instead of Glenmorangie 10 or whatever, because this is one's in most bars, so it'd make a good video. Let me know if you think that'd be good, or give me suggestions. Alright, but anyway, with the 10, I just don't think this one does it, and there's a lot of other Glenmorangies out there that are very, very good, a lot of their experimental stuff, so spend a couple extra dollars and go for one of those. Now the last one getting removed from stock it, I do not have a bottle of anymore because they're impossible to get, and that's part of the reason I'm removing it. Elmer T. Lee. Can you believe at some point I said that you should stock Elmer T. Lee? Just, this explains the timing before Buffalo Trace was insane the way that they are. And Elmer T. Lee is a fantastic whiskey, if you can find it. And if you find it, it's going to be about $400, which is stupid, right? That's like a $50, $60 bottle in my mind, and it's just going along with all the rest of the Buffalo Trace stuff. So it's removed from my stock it because it's not fair to call it that. I do think it's still very, very good. I haven't had it for a couple of years, so I would assume the taste is pretty good. If you've had it, maybe you feel that way. Haven't really heard anybody say anything negative other than the price. But regardless, I'm going to move that down to a try it, because I think a bar is the only place you're actually going to be able to have any of that whiskey. Now the whiskeys that I'm moving up to stock it. These are ones that should be on your shelf. Assuming that you like it. I mean, there's a couple in here that you might not actually just like, but if you do, you're gonna probably have this one on your shelf. The first one is one of my favorite whiskeys, and that is the Ardbeg 10. Now, Ardbeg 10, I just couldn't have enough good things to say about it, and what I find myself doing is comparing any peated whiskey to this one. Now, obviously, I've had some better ones. The Port Charlotte 10 will blow this one out of the water in my mind every single time. But the Ardbeg 10 is something really special, and especially to introduce people to peated whiskeys, I think this is a great one, but I also will be caught drinking this basically any night of the week. Hopefully this one doesn't get any flack, but the Jack Daniel's, just old number 7, I mean, this one should just be in your bar. For a lot of reasons, not the least of which is that, you know, people know it, they enjoy it, makes a great mixer. Frankly, it tastes fine on its own, although I don't tend to drink it neat. And probably other reasons. I do have another finger here that I can't think of. But Jack Daniel's Old Number 7 honestly should just be on your shelf. It just should be on your shelf. Okay, so let's stock it. Another one along the same vein is Jameson. Now this is a smaller bottle here, which is good because it's almost empty, so I get to buy another one. But I find myself rebuying Jameson. It's another one that's just a great mixer. It drinks fine. Actually, this one drinks better neat than, say, the Jack Daniels. But I don't know, like if you don't like Jameson, I would say you probably don't like whiskey. Another one from Ardbeg, this is the Corey Vrecken. This one made my list of moving up to stock it. It's a little expensive, but here's the thing. I personally have bought like 4 bottles of this since I started the channel. Now that might not seem like a lot when you think about 10 years, but you gotta picture, I'm buying a lot of bottles. For me to rebuy any bottle doesn't really happen too much unless I find that I need it for like comparisons or something like the Larceny I've bought a bunch of times, but that one's already on the stock it list. Corey Vrecken is one that I put off buying for a few years when the price went up to close to $100, but it's come back down a little bit more. It's roughly 80 to 75 in my area, and I think this one is such a delicious whiskey. Easily the top one in their mainline whiskeys in my mind. So Ardbeg Corey Vrecken is now a stock it. Moving along to a rye. This is the Pikesville Rye. I was actually very surprised this one wasn't on my stock it list. This is one that I have recommended for years that people try. This is kind of that, hey, do you want to try some rye? Either get the Bullet Rye, which, by the way, I don't really think should be, that one's coming along later. We'll just leave it at that. But Pikesville Rye is one that I have continuously been impressed with at about the $45 price point at this point. I think it was 40 when I first reviewed it, so it really hasn't gone up much. Even if it's at 50, I still think this one is a delicious rye. And then lastly, this one was just a surprise that it wasn't on my stock it list. This is the Redbreast 12. I think this one should be kind of that, I mean, they call themselves the quintessential pot still Irish whiskey, and they are correct. This is pot still Irish whiskey. You know, maybe Green Spot is kind of in that running as well, but this one's a little cheaper. And I think more people would recognize the name Redbreast, which is nice. In general though, having Redbreast 12 is something that you would drink any night of the week and be happy about it. So this one's also on my stock it list. The next group is going to be ones that I'm decreasing from the buy it category down to either try it or ignore it. Now, there are 7 of them here, and I only have 2 bottles still on hand. One of them is very dusty, and a big chunk of that is because I actually realized I don't really think that you should buy these. So, let's start off with Bullet Rye. Now, this might be one of the more, I don't know, controversial ones, if you want to think of it that way, because a lot of people do like Bullet Rye, and I think it's fine. It belongs in a bar. It might belong in your bar, and that's totally fine. I don't think it lives up to everything else anymore. I think it had its heyday. And when you think of things like Dickel, Templeton, Redemption, even Knob Creek Rye, I think that there are alternatives that are better. And I always felt like Bullet Rye was maybe like a little bit watery. It needed a little higher proof in my mind. But anyway, so Bullet Rye, no go. I would probably put that one down to a try it because I think you're probably likely to try it at some point, and you should. Next up, this one. This one's like kind of sad to put on this list because frankly I want another bottle of it. The Yamazaki 12. This is a bottle that was about $100 when I first got it. It was actually, I believe it might have been the first $100 bottle I reviewed on the channel. I know there was like a McKellen 18 or something like that, which might have been over 100, but that was later. Anyway, so the Yamazaki 12, my grandmother actually, my late grandmother got me this bottle forever ago. And I remember just loving it, and I think part of it was like sentimental, but it also was good. I remember it's distinctly tasting a little bit like black tea, which I thought was interesting and not something that I taste very often. But at this point, the Yamazaki 12 is about $200, and I don't think it's worth it. There's enough other Japanese whiskeys out there, and you know, if you want to check out this video up here or up there, I forget which side it goes on at this point, there's a video I did about Japanese whiskey in order to try to tell the difference between true, actual Japanese whiskey and fake, either not really Japanese whiskey or stuff from Scotland. So there's some tips up there. But anyway, Yamazaki is an authentic Japanese whiskey, and it was delicious, but it doesn't deserve a buy it because the price point is way too high at this point. Think like Weller, right? Like I'm not going to tell anybody to drink Weller at this point because it's a stupid price. Yamazaki truly deserves a try it. If you can, even if you pay like $25 just to try a Yamazaki 12 at a bar, that's still worth it to me, but it's not a buy it. Up next is another bottle, the Highland Park 18. So I originally gave this a rating of buy it. I thought it was delicious, and I still probably would. The problem is this was the old bottles. I'll put a picture up here, and it's not the new stuff. Now, Highland Park will tell you that they haven't changed anything. I very much disagree. I don't think you change all of your marketing, all of your naming, and put like 8 years between it and still be able to say that it tastes exactly the same. I just don't. Frankly, I don't think any whiskey can do that. But anyway, the Highland Park 18 was delicious at its time. If you can find one of those old bottles anywhere, even at a bar, I mean, it's probably been open for a while, but it'd be worth a try. The newer ones are probably fine. I actually, honestly, have not tried the newer ones yet, so it's a little tough to say, but I do think this one's no longer a buy it, because I think even the price has almost doubled. It went from about, 120 up to like 180, something like that, so it's still a lot. All right, up next, a bottle I can finally show you. This one's another controversial one. Johnnie Walker Black. Now, this is a tough one for me to degrade from a buy it, and I am going to put it at a try it, but here's why. This was actually one of the first whiskeys to get me into whiskey, and I really liked it. A lot of people don't, and this is why I'm moving it down the list. I almost feel like I might have done a disservice to some people having this as a recommendation, when what ends up happening is people who don't like peat will try this, and then they won't like it, and they'll assume every scotch tastes like this, and then they move to being a bourbon drinker and never really go back. And I think that's a shame. There's a million good scotches out there, but in the case of Johnnie Walker Black, I think it's too likely that a newbie to whiskey will not enjoy Johnnie Walker Black, and instead we should really be pointing them to some of the fruitier or crispy, crisp, refreshing kind of Speysides. That would be my suggestion for a newbie to whiskey, and not this. But this one really makes me sad, because that was, hurts my soul a little bit. Okay, this next one I don't think I'll have to convince you too much of. I gave it a buy it, the Willet Pot Still Reserve. Now this was that, long bottle. It's got kind of a cool thing. It looks like a pot still, and it tastes fine. Honestly, it tastes fine, but I just don't think it deserves a buy it, and I would just degrade it to a try it. This next one is actually going to degrade 2 steps, so it's going to go from buy it to ignore it, and this one hurts a little bit too. This one's the Bowmore 15. I really wanted to like this one a lot more, and this one has a nice sheen of dust on it at this point because I rarely ever go to it. It's about half empty. Really, I should kill it off before it just tastes like nothing, but it is from Islay. I love most things from Islay, and I just don't love this one. It tastes like the dunnage that it was probably aged in. And it's not great to me. I just don't think it carries enough of the peat smoke that I would kind of want in this whiskey. If I remember correctly, actually, it's pretty high. Yeah, it's sherry cask finished with layers of rich peat smoke. And I just remember, and have tried this somewhat recently as well, that it's not that much peat. It just doesn't carry it well. Anyway, so the Bowmore 15 is getting an ignore it for me. And lastly in this category is Nika from the Barrel. This one's a little bit of a asterisk, if you want to think of it that way, because when I reviewed it, this actually was, I think I called this like my whiskey of the year. I really, really enjoyed Nika from the Barrel. Here's the problem. It's not whiskey. Oh well, they tricked us all, right? So Nika from the Barrel is no longer a buy it. It's gonna be down in ignore it. Now for my last category, these are increasing from try it up to something else, probably buy it, and we'll make that determination as we talk about it. So the first one here is Maker's 46. So this is kind of the newer barrel. It says French oaked on it, 46. They got rid of the, bottle. They got rid of the old bottle, which I really liked more, but it doesn't matter. The bottle truly doesn't matter in this case. Maker's Mark 46, I gave a try it, but I actually think that this should be a buy it. And part of that is more the time-testedness of my own experience of this is usually what I buy people for a present if I know that they enjoy bourbon. And I've bought this particular bottle at least 6 times as gifts. And I just think it's worth it. Like, I've personally bought it a whole lot, so I think it should be a buy it. Now, I know some people give Maker's Mark a little bit of flack. They call it boring or whatever, but I think maybe they just don't like wheated bourbons, or maybe they're thinking more about the regular Maker's Mark. But the 46 really is a step up, and it's a good way to introduce a bourbon drinker to something that's a little higher ABV, just a little bit, and see if they like it. French oak is nothing to laugh at either. It's really good stuff. possibly my gravest sin that I have committed on this channel, and you've all let me know it, is giving the rating of Try It to Wild Turkey Rare Breed Bourbon. Now, Wild Turkey Rare Breed Bourbon is almost gone, so I've changed my mind a little bit on this one. I am going to upgrade it to a buy it. I think, to be perfectly honest, I have no idea why I didn't enjoy it for a little while, but it's just one of those things. And at this point, I really do enjoy it. So I will almost certainly be buying another one of these. I don't think it's a stock it for me. I know it's probably a stock it for a lot of you. But for me, I'll probably rebuy this, but that will likely be the last one I buy. But anyway, I have one more to tell you about. I don't have this one on hand, and we can all be happy about that. I originally gave it a rating of a Try It. I would like to say I must have been drunk to even give it that much of a rating, but that's literally what I do here, so it's really not an excuse. But the Johnnie Walker White Walker, I gave a rating of Try It, and I actually even remember on the video kind of saying I liked it because it had like a weird cherry flavor to it, but then I think back on it, and the whole gimmick of Johnnie Walker White Walker was stick it in your freezer and then drink it. Now, we all know what happens when you put alcohol in the freezer, right? It dulls the flavor. It gets rid of some of the bad parts. Their entire marketing campaign was, this tastes bad, put it in the freezer, and maybe it'll taste good. And they were right, it tasted bad. But it did taste better if it was frozen, frozen. Anyway, so the Johnnie Walker White Walker is definitely moving down to ignore it. It's not even much of an option, although it is funny how many of those are still on the shelf to this day. It's probably 5 years later at this point. Well, I promised you all that I would drink my least favorite whiskey at the end of this just to see if I've changed my mind. Now, many of you know that I dislike Black Velvet, I dislike Proper 12, but many more of you know that I dislike Johnnie Walker Red. So I am going to drink some Johnnie Walker Red. I'm going to cheers all of you for being wonderful people. People who I would drink this for. So, cheers everybody. Ugh. Even just the smell makes me not happy. Like, this is my first drink of the day, and was 10:15 at night. I deserve better than this. Come on. All right, cheers everybody. Ugh. Go check out the Patreon. Cheers. You know, that ain't so... No, I'm just kidding. It's terrible. All right, it's terrible. Thank you, everybody, for joining me here on the Whiskey Dictionary, or whatever the heck the name of this show is called. Good night, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of your night. Cheers. Not with this.